For anyone who is here, if you look in the chat, Renee put a link in there. And so the presentation stands alone, and then there's a link to a document that will be most usable by your staff, but the presentation really, it refers to some of the things on that worksheet, but worksheet is much more practical, presentation's more high level. May be helpful to have both up. So it's 12:02. I think I will go ahead and get started with the workshop. And if anyone else decides to join, they can step in as they're able. My name is Carolyn Clow. I am village president in the village of McFarland, but really speaking to you today based on my work experience, my former role as the lead procurement officer for Dane County. I spent 20 years in the purchasing department for Dane County. So I come at this with some pretty significant experience. And hopefully today it can be helpful in providing some more context and background for elected officials and some practical advice for staff who may be using these or needing to implement some of these purchasing strategies. As we go through, Anne, will you monitor for raised hands?
Sure, I can do that for sure.
Okay. Feel free to type a question in the chat or raise your hand. I do have some formal slides and a formal presentation to go through, but I think a lot of the value of taking the time for this today and a lot of the value of actually having these types of meetings is really in the discussion and the questions that folks pose and the answers that we can provide, things that we figure out together and things that we figure out on our own. For anyone who joined later, there is also a document. The link is in the chat that it will be very practical. I will refer to it just a little bit, but mostly it's a reference document takeaway for staff from this meeting. So I decided to use this as my first question and my first slide because we've been kind of tapping around the edges of this question during my time on the board of DCCVA. And I think it can provide some context for what I have to say, which is when I first came to this conversation, it seemed like when the organization first came to this conversation, we thought, wow, we'll just buy together and it'll be so much easier and everyone will save a lot of money and this is great. And then as we started to dig in and even have the simplest conversations about this, it became very complicated very quickly. And I think the reason that it is that we haven't been successful with this is that it is very complicated and that the places where I see, having done this for a long time, that we can find some value are not necessarily in us purchasing together, but rather in us sharing resources and sharing information and knowing where the resources and information exist across other organizations. So 4 main reasons that I see that get in the way is one is time. So if we're going to coordinate all of our purchases across our entities, it takes time. and effort. And there is only so much money that we can save, and the time and effort of that coordination is really oftentimes not worth it. The second is that for the routine daily purchases, those are not the driver of our expense. The driver of our expenses as municipalities is staffing and staff time. And that gets back to use of time. The goods and services that we're purchasing in general are in service of the staff that we have. And we need to be conscious of that. The third item is the need for particular goods. The Village of McFarland has things that they need in particular, different brands, different manufacturers that they use. Middleton or Monona or Windsor all use different products and services. And there are good reasons that we use what we use and good reasons to stay with what we have. The final reason is that the really big purchases, the capital purchases, the bonded purchases are unique, often one-offs, usually one-offs, and there isn't a lot of crossover in those items. So in light of that, all the challenges, and I think those challenges are really why we weren't making more traction with this group. What do we do in our independent agencies to save money when we're buying things? Because we're all looking to do that. There's only so much money to go around. We have our levy limits to abide by. The first thing that I see here is really looking for opportunities for collaboration, and opportunities for collaboration are really shared services or shared use of a good, and less so actually procuring something together that we'll both use independently. So those opportunities for collaboration oftentimes are going to happen with your neighbors or with other municipalities that are doing something very, very similar to what you're doing. And they'll be pretty apparent where the collaboration might be, and then you have to work through the details of that. I think the second way to save money on these procurements that I've seen is to automate the routine purchases. So find ways, take the time to find the best pricing on the things that you purchase a lot. Your janitorial supplies, your road salt, maybe ammunition, fuel, office supplies, copy machines, things that you're buying a lot of, and find the best price and stick with that channel of purchasing. That leads into the next item, which is using existing cooperative contracts. There's lots of contracts that are out there. The contracts are referenced in the document that I've provided, a handout. It's an avenue for finding good pricing. And then oftentimes for municipalities, small entities like ours, only issuing a bid or request for proposals when it's absolutely necessary. And I think oftentimes that's what we're doing. These routine purchases that are on cooperative contract will never get as good a pricing in McFarland or any community in Dane County as these large cooperatives get. So we're best off just using the larger vehicles and not working on our own. So then, great, you have all that information, but we still need help. We're small. You know, in Dane County, really only the city of Madison and Dane County actually have professional purchasing staff that do that full-time, paid. The city of Madison only has 3 people and Dane County only has 3 people for all of the millions and millions of dollars that those 2 entities spend. So how can small entities like ourselves actually save money? One way that we can do that is we can leverage what work that the state has already done. A lot of people know VendorNet. VendorNet is the state's vehicle where they post all of their contracts, they post all of their bids and requests for proposals. That information is available to us. Those contracts are available to us. It's a nice place to find contracts because they're focused on Wisconsin companies and companies that can serve Wisconsin, unlike some of these other larger cooperatives. And there's in general someone that you can pick up the phone and call who works for the state of Wisconsin And over the years, if you've been part of any of these conversations, you've probably heard about VendorNet and oh, the state's contracts and this, that, and the other. And that's gone around and around for a long time. It is somewhat cumbersome to use them if you are fairly new to this or you don't do it a lot. They have, in the last 5 or 6 years, created another part of their system called WISPI that folks are less familiar with and that is less utilized by municipalities. WISPI is an online platform. It's an Amazon-like experience where you have your login and your password, and you can see the state's pricing in different commodity areas there. They have a lot of janitorial products on that. They have office supplies on that, toner cartridges, batteries, consumable paper goods, trash bags. They have some IT items that are available on there. They've been adding vendors as they're able. That online platform is a fairly easily accessible way for municipalities to really see what the state is offering and to buy in an easy way. Many of us are buying online. Many of your employees are buying online. And so to have another online experience is easy, and to have an online experience where you have some assurance that these are vetted companies and that you're getting good pricing is something that the state hasn't pitched. It hasn't really, it is available to municipalities. It hasn't sold this to municipalities, so they're not marketing this. But if you go on their website, they will allow any municipality, employees of municipalities, to sign up and to use the contracts in this way. Links to all of these things and the references are available in the handout. I'm not going to take the time to specifically go through them or do a tutorial on using any of these things, but just more to let you know that they are available. All of the contracts that you can see on WISPI are competitively bid, competitively awarded, and they meet all of the purchasing guidelines for the state of Wisconsin, which in my experience, and I haven't read the ordinance in every single one of your municipalities, but have read a number of them across this state, you will find will meet all of your local purchasing ordinances as well.
Carolyn, there was a question in the chat. It's from Mayor Brar. I think you might have answered this. Do cities already use some of these?
Very few cities use WISPI at this time. Like I said, it's really not something that they have marketed. VendorNet will be something that your staff will be familiar with, very likely, because it's likely that there's been something through the years, especially somewhere larger like Middleton, Mayor Brar, where they would have used those contracts for something. I think where there's more opportunity for communities is that there are lots of contracts. And so maybe today you're looking for vehicles, but tomorrow you're looking for ammunition, or you're looking for medical supplies, or you're looking for mattresses, perhaps for homeless shelter type space, or something different, that you go back in and you continue to look for new items that may come up that you need to purchase.
Thank you.
So we looked at what the state can do to help. What can the federal government do to help us? Believe it or not, most of the contracts that the federal government has are not available to municipalities. They have set up their contracts in such a way that only the contracts, only their IT contracts, their law enforcement contracts are actually available on a regular basis to municipalities. I have found this to be very, very helpful in the areas of IT and law enforcement. They do also offer some disaster relief and public health commodities on these contracts, just as in more of an emergency means of accessing them. But in general, the federal government, unlike the state of Wisconsin, is keeping their contracts for themselves. And that really probably serves us better as well. Their contracts are very large scale. This website is a little bit a little bit difficult to use. So I would point you to the state contracts, but for specialized law enforcement uses and for IT uses, going to find the GSA contracts helpful. And the link to those is in the handout. So what about these other cooperative contracts that we've heard about? US Communities was pitched for a long time by the National Association of Cities and by the Wisconsin Counties Association, National Counties Association, and other cooperative contracts. You'll get emails about them. There are all kinds of cooperatives available out there. Put about a half a dozen on the worksheet, including an organization called Value that was created by municipalities in Milwaukee and Waukesha counties. They basically made their own cooperative almost 20 years ago when cooperatives were very new and before they were popular. These contracts tend to be really easy ways to access competitively bid contracts, to get favorable pricing, to help you identify suppliers that you may have difficulty finding, and to save your staff from having to go through the whole procurement process. Someone has done it for you. Many of these contracts are very open-ended. They have lots and lots and lots of different products on there. They might even have the full product catalog for a company like Grainger that carries just about everything, or office supply companies, you know, Staples or Office Max. They'll carry their entire catalog and they'll give you a percentage discount of their whole catalog. You have to look carefully at the pricing from the cooperative. Sometimes it's the best pricing you can get, sometimes it isn't. But there are many, many of these available. And when in doubt, when your staff is in doubt, or if they feel like they're paying market pricing for something, they should really be looking for a contract where that's available. And one very simple question that staff can ask is, do you have contract pricing available for this item, for this product, for this service? And I've asked just that simple question of suppliers in the past and received a discount. Oh, we do have contract pricing for that. Actually would reduce the price by $10,000. Oh, so you just didn't choose to, to say that in the initial conversation. But that's a very, very simple way to not know which contract you might be looking for, but just to ask the supplier if they have a competitive contract. And when you talk about these things, there are also some other things that you want to consider, right? Because even though sometimes Mayor Brar thinks saving money is the only thing that we want to do, especially on road projects, there are some other considerations. I have to poke a little fun at you, Mayor Brar, come on. There are some other considerations that are important to us, right? So what about using our local vendors? What about sustainable products that are better for the environment, have less impact? And what about buying from targeted businesses? All of these considerations are important as well. And all of these considerations, there's very good reasons. Perhaps I don't want to take the lowest priced office supplies. I want to buy from someone who's in my community. And that's a decision that we make as a municipality based on what our purchasing rules say in our local ordinance for how we want to handle that particular issue. Or maybe we don't want to buy the lowest cost cleaning supplies. We want to buy a different line of cleaning supplies at the best price that we can pay for them because those supplies are more sustainable for the environment. Or we want to make sure that we're spending our money on targeted businesses that are owned by women, that are owned by minorities or veterans or other targeted groups, so that we can help to use the dollars, considerable dollars that our municipalities are going to spend to really build up businesses that might not otherwise be built up. All really important components of the conversation, and all things that you can also look for when you're looking at these cooperative contracts, when you're looking at the state's contracts, and when you're making the individual purchasing decisions. There are also all reasons that our municipalities may not want to do everything together because we may have different value choices around these issues. One of the other things that came up through the conversations that we've had here at DCVA is having sample bids and sample RFPs, and where do you post yours and where do I post mine, and how can we find these, and where can we put them all in one place, so when we need something, I don't have to write a document from scratch. I can use someone else's document. In over 20 years of doing this, I have used people's documents from all over the country for a variety of different things. So good places to look. VendorNet is a great place to look. The state posts all of their solicitations there. And once they have had a bid or an RFP that was out to bid, it's archived there. I started in 2001. VendorNet was just starting then. So the state has their documents on their back 20 years if you need to access them. In the state of Wisconsin, the Wisconsin Association of Public Purchasers was trying to resolve this question, same question that our group was talking about. Where can we put our documents so that other people can find them, so I don't have to keep sending emails out asking for things? They settled on using a product called Demand Star. It is a bid issuing service. It is free to municipalities, and it is provided at a cost to any companies that want to respond to the bids or requests for proposals that are listed there. For about the last 10 years, the larger counties, cities in the state of Wisconsin have been archiving most of their bids and proposals there. So it's a really good resource for Wisconsin bids and proposals. And there are also bids and proposals there from all over the country, because this is a national resource that you can see. You can log into that. You have to get a login and a password, but once you have their login and password, or your staff does, they can use that resource for free. You can post to the site if you want to post your bids and your requests for proposals out there. So if you're looking for more reach, if you're looking for the supplier list, right? We were talking about how do we as a group build a supplier list? Well, it's a lot of work actually, and it's hard to maintain. Anne's probably already feeling that a little bit now as people are sending her proposals, and how do we archive these and where do we put them? You can find supplier lists and Demand Star as well, in addition to the sample bid and RFP documents. So it's a resource if you're looking for things. I would encourage any agency to use, and it's completely risk-free because you just have a login. And it does do a nice job of posting the bids and RFPs too, if you want to use it in that capacity. And it is free to the municipality to do that. Any vendors who respond would need to pay. Many of the vendors that you work with would already be part of Demand Star because it is so common. The city of Madison has been using it for a long time, and a number of the larger municipalities in the state. Google is also another great place to find bid and RFP documents. I can't tell you how many times I have searched for something and found an organization in another state who had a bid out for just exactly the thing that I was trying to work on. Since so many government entities post their bids and requests for proposals online, there's just starting to build a larger and larger archive that is searchable, Google or another search engine. And ask your friends, which is really what we've been doing in our organization. It's the listserv that we've created, that we've asked folks to have their staffs join, so you can ask a question. Hey, I'm looking for window washing services. Has anybody done a bid for window washing services lately? Can I see a copy of your bid? What vendors responded? How much did you pay? So that method always works. So that's really what I had formally prepared for today. I would encourage you to take a look at the document that I provided, and would be happy to answer any specific questions that folks have about anything that I talked about or any other purchasing issues.
This is Anne. I would also like to just mention that I have also been searching periodically on VendorNet for RFPs that municipalities in Dane County have posted recently for different services or products. And I started putting those on the DCCVA website under resources. So that's another place to look. And I'll just kind of keep adding to that as time goes on. So if you're looking for what your neighbors might have put together for RFPs, it's not obviously going to be a comprehensive list, but that'll just be something I'll try to keep building over time, just as another resource.
I would say very useful. I didn't really know a lot of these things. Now I do. So very helpful to me. And I'm going to ask the staff what they're using now. I appreciate it, Caroline. Great job.
Thank you, Mayor Brad.
Thank you, Carolyn, for putting this together. Gurdeep and I recently met with the Builders Association, and part of the conversation was the rising costs for everybody. And part of the conversation is whether or not we could do shared services for purchasing equipment, as we were specifically talking about park equipment, and whether or not there would be any opportunities there on these large ticket items.
Absolutely. Did you come up with anything good, Mayor Swadley?
Well, we understand that, oftentimes, we have to bid this stuff out, but the idea is if we were using common vendors, maybe we could have better purchasing power.
And I think where you can align needs, that makes a lot of sense. I think the issue becomes, how much time do you spend aligning needs, and does it bear out? I think for something like a large piece of equipment that you're going to buy infrequently probably does bear out, because buying 2 or buying 3 may make sense.
Carolyn, that was kind of my question, and you kind of alluded to it. You showed a lot of different resources where you can go to look for pricing and information. Do you find it in your capacity that sometimes it's a dark hole as far as a time commitment researching some of these items? And is it really worth it spending that much time on it? And I think you just maybe identified it. If it's a large project or a large purchase, perhaps it is, but maybe not so much for a smaller item. Is that fair to say?
I would agree with that. And I think, Bob, if you look at things that are also recurring, that was one of the things that I mentioned in the presentation. So, your individual purchase of like janitorial supplies or paper goods or something may not be that much, but it's going to be recurring, and it's going to be the same products over time. Maybe worth finding your best valued supplier and then continuing with that, but not looking every single time you need to place a new order.
Okay. This was very informative. Thank you.
Well, DCCVA is very lucky to have somebody with 20 years of experience doing this. This is awesome.
Thank you.
Do we have more questions for Carolyn?
Hi, Ann. This is Jerry over at Bristol. Thank you, Carolyn, for doing this. I appreciate the information. It's all helpful. Question is, what about federal procurement rules that we're going to be running into on the bill infrastructure money that's going to be coming down from Washington? What can you tell us about that?
Jerry, you are so lucky because Ann and Forbes are looking for topic ideas for DCCVA to use in future meetings. And I think this would be a really good one, right? Because you're going to need, staff is going to need to know how to implement those, and they're tricky. And staff is also going to need a resource to ask questions of, because even if you've been through the presentation at the time, 6 months later, when you're finally ready to make your purchase or ready to pay for that item or whatever, wherever point you are, there'll be another snag or another wrinkle that wasn't apparent at the beginning, and you'll need an answer to that. So I do think that that's a good place for the organization to provide some resources for any of our member entities, because it's going to be an ongoing question, and there are some basic things that you need to know, but the nuances are not easy.
And there's going to be a lot of money available out there for the people that know how to do these applications and follow the rules. And of course, we don't know what happens if you don't follow the rules, but you don't want somebody knocking on your door several years from now saying, we're from the government, we're to help you audit your books.
You're absolutely right. I mean, we've had similar rules to that for a long time, that the county has followed. I think you'll find on the application side, that's not going to be a problem, right? So you can apply for you can think about what you want. You can apply for the money best you can according to the guidelines. They're going to make their award according to their guidelines. It will become the sort of a backside problem once you have the money. That's where you're going to want to make sure that you're following the rules. And there is a lot of money going. I don't think that they're going, we'll have to see what position they are into how deeply they audit everyone for, dotting every I and crossing every T. But I think having a resource as an organization where we can go to get that information would be really smart.
I know our state office is working on issues and just making sure that people are aware of what the rules are and make some attempt to follow them. But there are going to be resources available for the people that know how to access them. I think that's the bottom line.
Yeah, and I think being an organization that helps our member agencies know how to access them would be real value of this organization, my estimation.
Thank you for helping with us today, by the way.
You're welcome.
Can I ask you a question? Are you talking about someone to help with how to spend the money or to how to follow the rules in spending the infrastructure money? Or can you?
Sherry was asking about following the rules.
Following the rules.
Once you have the money. So there are some specific procurement rules that are attached to some of that money, it depends the exact stream of where the money is coming from. And it is probably worth providing some education about that and someone to answer questions. I think that the federal government, when I've seen them, has put together their own FAQs, right? So it becomes, how do I read the guidance that's provided by the federal government? Forbes has made his career of this, and then interpret that so someone else can understand what they're talking about and implement that. And that's always the challenge when you're working with a unit of government that's higher than you are. How do you read and understand the guidance that you're receiving?
We'll definitely jump on that and see if we can find the right consultant to bring in that would be an expert on that.
Yeah, not at the annual meeting. We got to do something more exciting than that. I mean, procurement, you can't talk about procurement rules at a party.
It could be another lunchtime roundtable where we bring in someone that can do a 1-hour conversation and answer questions.
And when you provide, the handout that I provided is really meant to be a staff resource for practitioners, the people that are in the field that are placing the orders. If there are questions that they have about that resource or how it can be used, please feel free to provide them with my contact information. They're welcome to reach out. There is one item at the very bottom. It's the very last item on the handout, and it is an organization that is working on creating a resource that compares the cooperatives to each other. So they're attempting, it's a very difficult task. They're attempting, however imperfectly, to load the information of pricing across various cooperatives and to be able to provide a resource that helps to make that evaluation. It's a free resource. And definitely something that's worth checking out, because as you mentioned, President Whitford, the rabbit hole of, where are you looking and how much time are you spending looking and how much value do you get for that time, can be considerable. And this is sort of an attempt by one company to help users to step out of the need to do that and to be able to see everything in one place. Any other questions or comments today?
Great job. Looks like time for lunch, isn't it?
There you go.
Thank you, Carolyn, for your time and for your information. If anybody else needs the reference document that Carolyn mentioned, it is in the chat. And I also put it on our website as well. So it's I think it's a 2-page PDF file.
Again,
Thank y'all for coming
Carol-
today.
Carolyn, for doing this. And it's nice to see the mix of people that we have in the meeting this afternoon. That's very nice. Thank you.
Have a nice day, everyone.
Thank you.